For most of my life, I lived within the walls of certainty. Walls built from the sturdy, reliable bricks of science, facts, and logic. As a geophysicist, I embraced a world through the lens of measurable data, patterns that could be tested, and conclusions drawn from evidence. There was little room for anything that could not be measured, observed, or analyzed. Faith was a distant concept, one I didn't understand and certainly did not prioritize. To me, ideas about God, heaven, hell, and the supernatural were simply stories, comforting narratives for those who couldn't face the harshness of reality. I wasn't hostile to religion. I just had no reason to believe. If something couldn't be proven, then it simply wasn't real. At least, that was a thought that guided my every step. But everything changed one fateful day. On February 17th, 2023, the world I knew collapsed. Or rather, I did. It was just another day in the harsh, unyielding cold of Antarctica, working alongside a small team of researchers. We had been stationed there for weeks, investigating unusual electromagnetic signals deep beneath the thick ice. Strange, erratic patterns that couldn't be explained by any known natural forces. They pulsed with a rhythm, like some kind of cryptic code embedded in the ice. Some of us believed they might be tied to hidden volcanic activity. Others speculated they were related to deep Earth movements. But no matter how many hypotheses we tried, there was no answer, no solution that could explain what we were hearing. That morning, I woke up feeling off. I couldn't quite place it, but something was different. Maybe it was exhaustion, a side effect of working long hours in such a brutal environment. My body felt drained, as though it were shutting down in protest of the cold and the isolation. But I shook it off. We had a job to do, and there was no time for weakness in a place like this. I suited up in my thermal gear, made my way out to join the team, and braced myself for another day of drilling into the ice. Today was going to be different, though. We were drilling deeper than ever before, trying to reach the source of those strange signals. As the drill bit into the thick layers of ice, things began to go wrong. Equipment that had been working perfectly all morning suddenly failed. The GPS went haywire. Even the radio crackled with distorted whispers, impossible to explain. I glanced at my team, unease crawling up my spine, but no one said anything. We were all in the same boat, and none of us wanted to admit that something was wrong. Then at 11:42 a.m., it happened. 1 second, I was standing on solid ground, and the next, the ice beneath my feet cracked with an intensity one had never felt before. It wasn't just a crack. It was as if the entire glacier had shattered beneath me, the ice breaking into sharp, jagged fragments. The world around me tilted violently as the ground gave way, and I plunged into the depths of the unknown. I remember that moment of weightlessness, the surreal sensation of falling without understanding. My body wasn't responding, and yet I felt strangely calm. There was no panic, no rush of adrenaline, just a moment of suspended disbelief. And then all went black. But instead of the searing pain I expected, there was only an overwhelming sense of peace, a quiet stillness that wrapped around me like a blanket. I knew, on some fundamental level, that I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. The fear, the anxiety, they simply didn't exist. I looked down and saw myself, lying motionless beneath the ice, twisted and broken. My body was half buried, but there was no fear, no panic. In that moment, I felt distant from myself, detached. I had no desire to fight, to struggle, only a sense of peace so profound, it was beyond explanation. That's when I saw them, figures in white, glowing softly against the frozen darkness. They stood at the edge of the fissure, silent and still, watching me with a presence I can't fully describe. They weren't human. That much was clear. And yet, I felt no fear. Instead, I felt a strange familiarity, a presence that radiated both power and calm, as if they knew something that I did not, something deep and ancient. Before I could fully process what I was seeing, I felt a pull, gentle but insistent force that began drawing me upward, away from the ice and those strange figures. I felt myself being lifted, not by my own will, but by something far more powerful. I was being drawn towards something far greater than I could understand. And that's when I saw it a tunnel of light. But this wasn't just light. It was alive. It hummed with energy, like it was wrapped in warmth and power at the same time. I wasn't walking, but I was moving, effortlessly drawn toward the source of this light. It felt like I was being called. And then, in that moment of pure awe, I heard it. A voice, strong yet gentle, powerful yet calm. The moment I heard it, I knew who it was. I didn't need anyone to tell me. It was Jesus, David. His voice was both a call and a reassurance, all at once. The moment he spoke my name, everything inside me broke. Every doubt, every fear, every piece of skepticism I had ever held on to shattered. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as though he could see into the very depths of my soul. And yet, instead of judgment, I felt something I had never known before, a love so deep, so pure, that it transcended everything I had ever felt. And then he said something I will never forget. What you are about to see must be shared. The moment those words left his lips, the world around me shifted. The tunnel of light began to fade, and I found myself standing somewhere else. Somewhere I could never have imagined. Where was I? What was happening? And why did it feel so real? If you've made it this far, I want to thank you for being part of this journey. If you want to hear more about what happens next, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. By joining our community, you'll be supporting the work we do with passion and dedication. Don't forget to comment your name and city below. I'll be sending a special message to everyone who does. You might just find yourself featured in the next video, with your name shared with thousands of people, getting your minute of fame. As the world around me began to shift, I felt a strange sense of weightlessness, as though I was no longer bound by the laws of nature. The air felt thick and rich, pulsing with not energy I had never experienced before. It wasn't just the warmth that surrounded me. It was a sensation of being enveloped in something vast, something profound. I wasn't just existing in a new space. I was connected to it, as if it was a part of me. There was a moment of stillness, a sense of eternity hanging in the air, before the full scope of what was happening hit me. I was no longer in Antarctica, no longer surrounded by ice and snow. The frigid, harsh landscape I had once known had vanished, replaced by something entirely different. I stood on solid ground, but it wasn't the cold, hard earth I had expected. The surface beneath my feet was alive. It pulsed gently, like the very ground itself was breathing, exhaling a warmth that seeped into my bones. The air was thick with a presence, one I had never known. It was as though the land itself was sacred, infused with divine energy that filled every inch of the space. And then I saw him again. Jesus. He stood beside me, his presence radiating with not overwhelming power, but also with the gentlest of comforts. There was nothing about him that was threatening. Nothing about him that made me feel small or insignificant. In his presence, I felt safe, like nothing in this world could ever harm me as long as he was near. He turned to me, his eyes full of compassion, and simply said, "Look, David, see what has been hidden." I followed his gaze, my heart pounding in my chest as I took in the vast landscape before me. What I saw next would change everything I believed about the world, about life, about everything. Towering in the distance were enormous walls of ice, far bigger than anything I had ever seen. These walls weren't like natural formations. They were too precise, too perfect. The way they rose from the ground, they seemed placed as though someone or something had built them. And as I looked closer, I realized something more disturbing. They weren't just walls. They were barriers. A chill ran down my spine as I understood the weight of what I was witnessing. These barriers were meant to keep something out, or perhaps keep something in. Jesus spoke again, his voice tinged with sadness. "These walls were placed here for a reason, David," he said. "And soon, the world will seek to break them." I turned to look at him, confusion and fear welling up inside me. "What do you mean?" I wanted to ask. But before I could speak, everything changed again. My vision expanded, and I felt as though I was looking at the earth from a higher plane. Below me, I could see beneath the ice a vast network of structures, sprawling and intricate, extending far beyond what I could comprehend. These weren't natural formations. They weren't the result of ice or wind or time. These were man-made structures, fortresses, cities, and twisted monuments, carved into the earth like they were part of not ancient civilization. I watched in disbelief as my mind tried to make sense of what I was seeing. These structures weren't just old. They were ancient, older than anything humanity had ever known. And then I saw it. Movement. Figures, not human, but something else entirely, were moving within the structures. Shadows. Dark. Twisted shapes that crawled through the ice like they were part of the frozen earth itself. A deep sense of dread filled me. These were no ordinary ruins. These were places that had been sealed away long ago for a reason. And now, humanity was unwittingly disturbing them. These beings, Jesus said, his voice heavy with sorrow, they've been trapped for a reason. I watched as figures from my own world, scientists and researchers just like me, continue to drill, unaware of the forces they were awakening. They thought they were uncovering lost history. But what they were really doing was breaking the seal on something far older and far more dangerous than anyone could have ever imagined. Then, everything shifted again. The vision grew darker, and I saw the future unfold before my eyes. News broadcasts flashed across my mind. The world would hear the greatest scientific discovery of all time, the discovery of lost civilizations beneath the ice. The headlines would declare a breakthrough, a monumental step forward in understanding our past. But the truth behind this discovery would be hidden. The beings that were buried in the ice weren't here to help humanity. They were here to deceive us. Jesus' voice was grim, filled with sorrow. They believe they are unlocking knowledge, but they are unleashing a great deception. And then I saw the consequences of these discoveries. The world would embrace these so-called advancements. Promises of cures for diseases, promises of unlimited energy, promises to extend human life. The world would welcome these gifts with open arms, and they would be seen as the next step in human evolution. But I knew the truth. What they were really offering wasn't progress. It was a trap that would sever humanity's connection to God. The people would line up eagerly, accepting these gifts, thinking they were walking toward a brighter future. But with each person who accepted, a part of them would die. Their souls would grow dim, their connection to God weakening until it faded entirely. Jesus' face grew more somber, and he turned to me. You must warn them, David. Tell them what you've seen. Tell them to stay close to me. Soon, the door will close. Before I could respond, everything began to fade. The light dimmed, and I felt myself falling back into the darkness, unable to grasp what had just happened. And then I gasped. I was back. I opened my eyes, surrounded by familiar faces, my team, doctors, and researchers, all staring at me with shock and disbelief. I had been gone for 12 minutes. No pulse, no breath. But here I was alive, and forever changed. The world I had known, the world I believed in, was no longer the same. The moment I opened my eyes and found myself back in my body, the first thing I noticed was a heaviness in the air. It was like the very atmosphere had changed. The world outside seemed more distant, more foreign than I'd ever imagined it to be. It was as though the veil between the physical and the spiritual had been torn open, and now I was left to navigate the space between both worlds. I tried to gather my thoughts, but they scattered like leaves in a strong wind. What had just happened? Was it real? Was it a dream? No, it couldn't have been. The clarity, the vividness, the emotions that coursed through me, it was undeniable. I had experienced something far beyond anything I had ever considered possible. The voice of Jesus still echoed in my mind, his words etched into my very soul. What you are about to see must be shared. But what was I supposed to do with this knowledge? I was a scientist, grounded in logic and evidence. How could I, someone who had spent his life rejecting anything that couldn't be proven or measured, explain this? How could I share something so monumental, so overwhelming, with a world that was entirely unprepared for it? The weight of the responsibility began to sink in. Jesus had given me a mission. He had entrusted me with something so sacred, so urgent, that it could not be ignored. And I knew in that moment that I could never go back to the way things were. I could never go back to a life of doubt, to a life where I questioned everything beyond my understanding. The veil had been lifted, and now I could see. I had to share what I had seen, even if the world was not ready to hear it. I stepped outside, the cold of the Antarctic wind biting at my face, but it felt different. It felt sharper, as though the very air had changed in a way I couldn't quite explain. My team was huddled together, their faces a mixture of confusion and concern. They had all been there when I fell, when I was lost to them for those 12 minutes. They had witnessed the impossible, the moment when I came back to life. But none of them knew what I had seen. None of them had felt what I had felt. How could I explain it to them? How could I even begin to make them understand? One of my colleagues, Sarah, came up to me, her eyes wide with concern. "David," she asked softly, "what happened? You were gone. We thought we lost you." I looked at her, her face full of worry, and I knew that I couldn't share the full truth with her yet. The words weren't ready. The world wasn't ready. "I don't know," I said, my voice unsteady. "I don't know what happened, Sarah, but I saw something. Something that it's going to change everything." She studied me for a long moment, her brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" "You're scaring us, David." I took a deep breath, my mind still reeling from the experience. "I can't explain it right now, but there's something happening here. Something bigger than any of us understand. And I think we're waking it up." Her eyes widened, a flicker of realization crossing her face. "What do you mean by waking it up? What are you talking about?" Before I could answer, I felt it, the pull again. It wasn't physical, but it was powerful, undeniable. Something within me was being drawn towards something greater. It was as if the universe itself was calling me, urging me to take the next step in this journey. The words of Jesus echoed again in my mind. "Soon, the world will seek to break them." It hit me then. Those barriers, those walls of ice that had appeared before me, they weren't just physical, they were spiritual, and the world was on the verge of breaking them. The scientists drilling into the earth, believing they were uncovering something ancient and forgotten. They were, in fact, about to release something far darker, far more dangerous than they could imagine. And it wasn't just the world of science that was at stake. It was everything. The very fabric of reality itself was trembling, and the consequences of breaking those walls would reach far beyond what we could see. I turned away from Sarah, unable to share more than what I had already said. I needed to think, to process, to understand what was happening. But the more I tried to push it away, the stronger the pull became. I walked through the frozen wasteland of Antarctica, the cold gnawing at my skin, but it felt distant now, as if it was no longer my reality. My thoughts were consumed by the vision I had seen, by the warning Jesus had given me. The ice, the walls, the structures buried beneath the earth. It was all connected, and I was the one chosen to bear witness to it. What had been hidden for centuries was about to be revealed, and the world was not ready for what lay beneath the surface. I didn't know what to do next, but one thing was clear. I could never go back to the way things were. I had been given a purpose, a mission, and I had to follow it, no matter the cost. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew that I could no longer ignore the pull that had taken hold of me. As I stood there, alone in the vast expanse of ice and snow, I couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to happen. The world was on the brink of a revelation, one that would shake the very foundations of everything we knew. And David, as the days passed, the weight of what I had seen and experienced grew heavier. Every step I took, every moment I spent in this frozen wasteland, felt like I was carrying the world on my shoulders. The truth I had witnessed was not just for me. It was a message, a warning that had to be shared with the world. But how? How could I possibly convey the gravity of what I had seen, the ancient forces that lay dormant beneath the earth, waiting to be awakened? It wasn't just the scientific community that was at risk. It was the entire world. The barriers, the walls of ice that had once seemed so distant, were now so real, so tangible. They were spiritual, and breaking them would unleash something far darker, far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. I couldn't escape the visions. They haunted me, even in my waking hours. The structures buried beneath the ice, the twisted, shadowy figures that moved within them, They were all part of something far greater. And those who thought they were uncovering lost history were, in fact, setting the stage for a catastrophe. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, those beings moving like shadows to the frozen labyrinths. They weren't human. They weren't extraterrestrial. They were something else entirely, something ancient, something evil. The world would soon know them, but it would be too late by then. The deception would be complete, and when it was, there would be no turning back. I walked among my team, but I felt completely disconnected from them. They didn't understand. How could they? No one else had seen what I had seen. No one else had felt the presence of those figures, had heard the warning from Jesus himself. I couldn't even bring myself to tell them what I knew. I didn't have the words, and even if I did, they wouldn't believe me. They would think I was mad, just another casualty of the harsh conditions, of the isolation. But I couldn't ignore the call. The pull was still there, deep inside me, guiding me forward. I had been shown the truth, and now I had to do something with it. The world had to know what was coming. The walls were already beginning to crack, and soon the truth would spill out. And when it did, the world would be forever changed. I couldn't let it happen without a fight. I knew what I had to do. I had to warn them. I had to warn the world, no matter the cost. But the question remained, how? How could one man, one voice, make a difference when the whole world was so blind? How could I fight something so vast, so ancient, when I barely understood it myself? The answer came to me slowly, like a whisper in the back of my mind. The power wasn't in one voice, in one man. The power was in the people, the community, the collective strength of those who would listen, who would heed the warning. And so my mission became clear. I had to share my story, no matter how unbelievable it sounded. I had to reach those who would listen, those who would understand the urgency, those who would stand together to fight the darkness that was coming. It wouldn't be easy. There would be resistance, there would be doubt, but there would also be hope. There would be a community willing to stand up and say, "We will not let the darkness consume us. We will stand in the light." I didn't know how it would unfold, but I knew this. The time had come to speak, to share the truth, and to stand together. The world had to be warned, and I would be the one to do it. Thank you for being a part of this journey. If you've been moved by this message, please don't forget to hit that like button and share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Let us know which city you're watching from and share your name. I'd love to give you a special shout out in the next video, a moment just for you. Share with thousands of people. Imagine hearing your name, recognized by a community that is standing together in truth. Don't miss out. Comment now, like the video, and let's continue this journey together. The days blurred together as I tried to make sense of the vision that had been revealed to me. The truth, the deep and ancient truth, felt like a weight that I could no longer bear alone. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the walls of ice, the figures trapped inside, the twisted monuments that pulsed with not eerie energy. The deception was unfolding, slowly but surely, and I was powerless to stop it. But I was not alone. In the quiet moments, when I allowed myself to listen, I heard it, the faintest whisper like a voice on the wind, urging me forward. It was a call, the call to act, to speak, to share what had been shown to me. I could no longer ignore it. The world needed to know, and it needed to know now. I thought about the people who would be affected, the ones who would blindly follow the promises of progress, the ones who would eagerly embrace the so-called advancements that would be offered. They didn't know what they were walking into. They didn't know that by accepting the gifts, they would be surrendering something far more precious than they could ever understand. Their connection to God, their very souls. The world would be deceived, and it would be too late to turn back. I thought about the scientists, the researchers, the ones who would be the first to discover what lay beneath the ice. They would think they were uncovering a great and ancient truth, but they were wrong. What they were about to find would be their undoing. I had been shown the future, and the path was clear. Humanity was on the verge of making a choice, one that would shape the course of history, for better or for worse. And I knew that it was my responsibility to warn them, to help them see the truth before it was too late. But how could I reach them? How could I make them understand the danger that lay ahead? It wasn't enough to simply speak. It wasn't enough to just share my story. No, I needed to do more. I needed to build a community of people who would listen, who would take the message seriously, and who would stand together in truth. I couldn't do this alone. But together, we could make a difference. Together, we could spread the word, share the truth, and prepare the world for what was to come. The vision of the future still haunted me, but it also gave me a sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do, and I knew that there were others out there, just like me, who were ready to hear the truth and who would stand with me when the time came. The walls of ice, the ancient figures, the deception, it was all part of a larger plan, a plan that was slowly unfolding, and we were running out of time. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had seen the light, and I knew that it was worth fighting for. The truth would come out, no matter what, and I would be there, leading the charge. The journey had taken me to places I never imagined, both physically and spiritually. With each revelation, each vision, I felt as though I was being pulled deeper into something much larger than myself. What had started as a scientific expedition in Antarctica had turned into something far more profound, a mission that transcended logic, data, and evidence. Now, I was living in the tension between two worlds, the one I had always known, built on reason and facts, and the one I had been shown, filled with mysteries beyond human comprehension. The walls of ice, the structures buried beneath the earth, the beings that had been sealed away for centuries. It was all part of a divine plan, a cosmic battle between light and darkness, and the world, unaware of what lay ahead, was about to face a choice that would either bring them closer to the truth or pull them further into deception. I could no longer ignore the urgency of the situation. The future was at stake, and it was becoming clearer with each passing moment that humanity was on the brink of a great deception. The advancements that would be offered, the promises of progress, would be too alluring for most to resist. They would come disguised as solutions to the world's greatest problems. Diseases cured, energy provided without cost, life extended beyond natural limits. But behind these promises was a trap, one that would sever humanity's connection to the divine and leave them spiritually lost. Jesus had shown me this truth, and now it was my responsibility to warn the world. But how could I get people to believe in something so far outside their experience? How could I convey the gravity of the situation when the world seemed so focused on the immediate, the material, and the tangible? The answer, I realized, was through the power of community, through people who were willing to listen, who were open to the truth, and who would stand together against the tide of deception. We were not meant to face this alone. There was strength in numbers, and it was time for those who understood to come together and share this message with the world. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be resistance. There would be doubt. But the truth was powerful, and when shared in the right way, it could cut through the noise and reach the hearts of those who were ready to hear it. But I couldn't do it alone. The time for individual action had passed. Now, it was about collective action. We had to come together, united in purpose and in mission. The world needed to be warned, and we were the ones chosen to deliver that message. As I continued on this journey, I found myself more determined than ever to speak the truth. I couldn't let the darkness go unchecked. I couldn't let the lies spread unchecked. It was time to stand up, to be the voice in the wilderness, calling out for the world to see what was really happening beneath the surface. The warning had been given, and now it was up to us together to make sure the message was heard. The world needed to know the truth, and we would be the ones to make sure it reached them. Thank you so much for being part of this journey with us. If this message has resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. By joining our community, you're not just supporting us, you're becoming part of something greater. We don't make money doing this. We do it because we truly believe in the power of sharing the truth. Your like and subscription help us keep this mission going and allow us to reach even more people with this important message. Together, we can make a difference, and every bit of support you give means a world to us. As I stood at the edge of what I had come to understand, I realized that the path before me was not one I could walk alone. The truth I had uncovered was not mine to keep. It was meant to be shared, to be spread far and wide, so that the world would prepare for what was coming. But how could I possibly convey the gravity of it all? How could I make others understand the depth of what I had seen, what I had learned? The ancient structures, the beings trapped beneath the ice, the barriers that separated us from them. They weren't just relics of the past. They were warnings, signs that had been placed there for a reason. And soon, the world will begin to tear them down. The knowledge that was buried beneath the ice, the promises of technological advancements and eternal life, would deceive the masses. It would pull them away from the truth, from God, and into a darkness that they could not even comprehend. But there was still time. There was still a chance to change the course of history. We had been warned, and now it was up to us to take action. I couldn't do it alone, but together we could fight back against the lies. Together, we could be the light in the darkness. The warning had been given, and now it was time to take the next step. We had to be the voice that called out to the world, reminding them of the truth that had been hidden for so long. The time for action was now. The world had to wake up before it was too late. As I reflected on all that had transpired, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I couldn't ignore what I had seen. I couldn't walk away from the responsibility that had been placed on me, and I knew that I wasn't alone in this fight. There were others out there, others who felt the pull, others who understood the urgency. Together, we could change the world. But the path was still uncertain. The darkness was growing, and the deception was taking root. But with faith, with courage, and with the strength of the community we had built, we could stand against it. We had to. Thank you for being with us on this journey. If this message has touched your heart, I encourage you to continue watching the next video that will be even more revealing in your life. Simply click on the video that appears on the screen, and you'll discover even more that you need to hear. And before you go, please take a moment to like this video and comment Amen below. By doing so, you'll be inviting more blessings into your life and ensuring that you continue to be a part of this community, a community that is standing together for the truth. Don't miss out. Click the next video and let's continue this journey of awakening and transformation.